Okay, so now the real fun part begins. We're going to start working on lighting in this scene. Okay, lighting is very important. Obviously, without good lighting, our scene wouldn't look too good. Now, currently I do have some lights in my scene, but these were just test lights that I created to basically test out the specularity of my shaders and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to the hierarchy panel. I'm going to take all of these point lights that I created, and I'm going to delete them, and now I have no lights in my scene. I can still see a little bit of the textures and things in my scene. That's because there's a default ambient light in the scene, and we won't worry about that now. Right now what we're going to do is we're going to start to systematically work on the lighting in this scene. So the way that we're going to do this is pretty simple. I'm going to first start off by creating the most basic type of lighting in any type of outdoor scene, which is sunlight. Okay, so this is going to be, I've already decided this will be a daytime scene. Of course you can make a nighttime scene if you wanted to, but I'm going to do a daytime scene with sort of a sunset type of look to it, kind of late afternoon. So I'm going to bring in a directional light, which is going to represent my sunlight. Okay, so to do that, I'll go to game object, I'll go over here to create other, and down here I have my three light types. I'm going to create a directional light. Directional light works great for sunlight. It has no attenuation. The sunlight just goes on forever, the way that it seems to work in the real world. Okay, so there's my light. What I need to do now is I need to rotate this light basically in whatever direction I want it to go. So it's going to be something like this. Now currently the position doesn't really matter too much. The position of the light is not that important when it comes to a directional light. Okay, so if I move it around left and right, up and down, forwards and backwards, it's not going to make a difference in the sense of where the light is coming from. What makes the difference is the rotation or orientation of the light. So as I rotate it, you can see in my scene that the light actually changes the angle. Okay, so rotation is the key thing here with directional lights. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the inspector and make some changes here to the settings. Okay, first of all, we have the ability to change the type. So if you want to change this to spotlight or point light, you can. Right now it's a directional light. We can also change the color. This is very important. It's kind of a late afternoon sunlight. Shouldn't be a white color. Should probably be more of a yellowish type hue to it. So something like this. Also, the intensity is 0.5 right now. That might be pretty good. I might change that later. We can add cookies to lights, but we'll talk about that later. We won't do that right now. Shadow types right now by default, Unity doesn't create shadows for my lights. So what I want to do is I want to go to shadows and turn on shadows. Now I have two types of shadows I can use in Unity: hard shadows and soft shadows. Okay, hard shadows. What's the plus to hard shadows? Hard shadows are faster to render. They're better performance-wise. The downside to hard shadows is they don't look as good as soft shadows. Okay, so you get these harsh type of edges to your shadows, which doesn't look pretty good. Soft shadows. The plus side to soft shadows is that they look great. They're nice and soft. They look more realistic and believable. The downside to soft shadows is that they're a little bit more expensive to render than hard shadows. In this case, since I'm making a next-gen game, I'm going to go all out. I'm going to use soft shadows. Now, what I want is for my light to come into these skylight windows and into my interior warehouse. Right now, that's not happening. The reason is because the window panes right here are blocking the sunlight from doing that. So in order to fix that, it's actually pretty easy. I'll select the window pane object right here, and what I can do is I can go to the mesh renderer parameters over here and take off the cast shadows parameter. So that's what I'll do. Come over here and I'll turn off cast shadows, and as soon as I do that, you can see the light from my sun comes in beautifully through my windows up there and cast shadows using all the objects in the ceiling, so you can see shadows of the little cables and lines and things like that, and the windows and the ceiling beam supports and the structural supports and all that stuff, the air vents, all that stuff is creating these really nice shadows. So at this point what I can do is I can take that sunlight, and then I can, from inside the warehouse, I'll use the rotate tool here, and I'll just rotate this how I want. This way I can set up the lighting exactly how I need it to be. So as I rotate, you can see the shadow moves around because the orientation of the light is changing. Now the second window up here, the skylight, I'm going to do the same thing. So I'll select it and I'll take off cast shadows. And when I look inside my scene, you can see that I have this really nice lighting coming into my scene. If I go outside, I have these kinds of shadows out here. So that takes care of the basics right there of that lighting. For the moment I'm finished with that, I'll probably come back and do some more tweaks. You probably notice that there's some strange artifacts, like when I get far away in the warehouse, you can see that the shadows appear to sort of appear and disappear if I get closer or farther away. Okay, those are specific settings, and I'll show you how to change that in a bit. For the moment though, I'm pretty happy with the way that the sunlight looks so far. I got it coming into the ceiling, through the windows, casting beautiful shadows inside of my warehouse. But there's still some more work to do. We've just barely scratched the surface of lighting. The last and final thing I'll do is I'll go to the directional light and I'll change its name. I don't like it being called directional light, so I'm just going to call this sunlight so that I'm aware of what that is. It's easier for me to identify once I have all of these objects in my scene. Okay, so I'm going to end this video here, and in the next one we're going to work on different types of lights, like creating point lights and spotlights, shadows, things like that. And we're going to talk about deferred and forward rendering.